You're listening to Conversations That Matter with your host, Terry Conrad.
Hi, everyone. I am Terry Conrad, and this is Conversations That Matter in a brand new year. Happy New Year. It's 2015, and we are in a brand new format. And we can thank our guest, Dan Keller, for that, because he is the one that said, hey, let's do a Google Hangout, and I've been flirting with this forever. It's going to make my life hella easier. So that is why we are doing it this way. Welcome, Dan Keller. So nice to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me on today.
I'm extremely excited, honored. I've known you for years. We met so long ago, back when I was doing my first agent reboot in Seattle. This is going back quite a few years now. And you absolutely impressed me and inspired me right out of the gate. And I feel like you're just this amazing person who works really, really hard and has done an amazing job of building a very successful business in a down market. And so I definitely think that you are someone that we need to have a conversation that matters with. So thank you for joining us. I see you are in your office.
Yes, I am here in my famous baseball office. Now this is my office. This is it.
Well, this is what, so okay, you actually had me over to your office. This was going back a few years to just meet you there and see how you operated and what you were building, and we had a little visit. And I was instantly impressed, and I had forgotten, and I definitely want to go into this. Your history is you used to play baseball.
Yes, that was, I say was my passion, but that is what I did from 12 years of age all the way through high school, all the way through college, and then even after college when, you know, at 23, 24, you're considered old in professional sports. So even after college, I went into the college and professional coaching of baseball. So it was hard to let go of, but I had to let go of it because at some point in time, when my goal was to build a family, to have to meet a woman, and I met Jenny, and then to have kids and to be a great dad and a husband, and being a college and pro baseball coach isn't real conducive to that because you're all over the country. You're never home. And so, I had to cut the ties in 2007, and that's how I got into the career that I'm in now.
And so while we set up how important and amazing you are, I just read on Facebook this morning that you have been named, one of 40 most influential mortgage professionals under 40. Like in the entire United States?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
And that's a cool, I guess I don't want to say it's an award, it's more of an honor.
Mm-hmm.
One, because I'm 39, so I stuck in right before, in the nick of time. Yep. I'm going to turn 40 this September. So, but no, I mean, the key word is influential. I think when you are in sales, I think if the award was the top 40 best salespeople, and it'd be different. But influential is a great word in the industry that I'm in because you're able to influence people. And in my world, that's a big part of selling is influencing and leading. So.
Well, and you do this so well. And we've fallen out of touch a little bit, but no matter what, you were always on my peripheral, and that is because you are so actively speaking and training and doing events for realtors. I remember that was sort of like your strategy. I think moving on was like, let's create this great opportunity to educate agents so that they can do a stronger business. And from what I can glean, you're building a lot of your business based on those relationships that you've established and setting yourself up as, a true expert and someone's going to help.
Well, setting myself up as a helper, that's I think this is healthy for our audience to kind of backtrack. So how I met you, which by the way, you said some really neat things about me. I think you are fantastic and brilliant and amazing. See, I met you my first year in the mortgage industry. A guy that I was working with and being coached under, Darren Persinger, invited me to come down to Agent Reboot in Seattle. And, I'm sitting there, and there's 300, 400, 500 real estate agents in the audience. And you're up on stage, and you gave just a great presentation. And a lot of it was centered around social media at the time. Social was kind of the next big thing, I guess.
Yeah.
In 08 and 09. But you spoke, and Michael McClure spoke, and Darren spoke, and what was really neat was you guys came down off the stage and you were just like normal people. To me, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are amazing. And I was truly inspired because I loved going to conferences and aspired to speak, to be a speaker one day. And so what was really neat afterward is to find out that just more about you guys and how real you guys were and what you guys, I'm used to listening to presenters go up on stage and pitch something or sell something, or there's always an agenda, a secondary agenda. And with you guys, it was talking more about social and relationships. And it kind of clicked to me. It was my first year in the mortgage industry, and some of the things that we're taught as real estate professionals and lenders is to generate business a certain way that the people teaching us did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And it wasn't working, and listening to you guys on stage and studying kind of the future of sales and the future of our industries, it had a lot to do with not only social media, but video, blogging. And, at the end of the day, we do all of that to create value. And so that was kind of the start, Terry. It was listening. You guys kind of motivated me in that direction. I believe after Agent Reboot, I opened a Twitter account and had a Twitter. And Twitter has been really good for me getting my message out. And yeah, I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, but I don't need it. The people that follow me and the business and the relationships that I have earned from just being on that platform has been phenomenal. And it's been a big part of what I've done with my brand.
I absolutely love that, and thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. But what is interesting to me is that you did see early on, the shift in the landscape and how business had been done previously and where things were kind of going. So I'd love to kind of dig into that a little bit more, because I think that is an interesting topic. I think there are still, certainly in my market, people who have been holding on to the ways of the past, and you can understand that too. And I think some of that is sort of demographic. I mean, if you're looking at retiring in 5 years, do you really want to radically change your model? Probably not, and probably don't need to. But when you look at people who are coming in newer, 5 years in, 10 years in, even and under, it's time to reassess and look at where are things going? How does the consumer actually want to communicate with you? And so this is I think a big debate. What did you notice early on? What was sort of the flag for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on there was such a focus on blogging. You had to blog. There was such a big focus on you had to be on Facebook and you had to be on Twitter. And I think because there weren't experts at the time, there was a lot of people going out and saying, hey, I'm a social media coach and I do this and I do this and here's how you do it. What I've found out in my personal life, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a few minutes. My wife, Jenny Keller, which owns a little company called Jenny Cookies, is we were being taught how to do social all wrong. It was all about pitching us and promoting us, and you need to let everybody know that you sell mortgages, that you're a mortgage guy, and publish your rates every day. And it was almost like I never went down that road, and I never did it because my wife was telling me, if you do that, I'm going to disown you, because that's just not what you do. Nobody wants to hear about you selling something every single day, And so I think early on, what I saw other real estate agents doing, so I'd see agents go to seminars like Agent Reboot in certain places, and I'd see them come back, and I'm like, oh my God, you're annoying. I want to unfollow you now because of you can't, every time you get a listing, you can't post. It's like you never get listings, and so you get one and you're going to post it. That's kind of the message they were giving.
Yeah.
And so I think early on, I took the approach, again, from seeing people like you and other conferences that I'd go to. I also, one of the biggest things I did early on is I hired coaches. Like I told you, I was coaching with Darren Persinger for a year, and I knew nothing about social media, video, blogging, none of that. And so I hired somebody that was doing that.
Yes. And he did it so well.
Yeah. And he taught me a lot early on about, just how to use the platform, not necessarily strategy, but more so where I needed to be and how to use it. And then after that, hired another business coach. And there was, with all the coaches that I've ever hired, and this is maybe part of my DNA and part of my character, but I've always known that if you give something to somebody, there's this law, this universal law called the law of reciprocity. If you give something to somebody, they're naturally inclined to give back. Okay?
Amen.
And so I really started to maybe take more interest in that in my business. And when I would go to these conferences and I meet great people like you guys, my clientele base is real estate agents that need a lender to refer to their customers. So I'm learning all this stuff and I'm having success with blogging and using video and using social media. Why don't I teach that? And why don't I share that to my real estate partners? And so that's kind of what I started doing. I started holding little meetups and having coffee with Keller networking events. That's what I call it. And I still host it. I just do it today on video.
Right.
So instead of having live meetups. But I think the biggest thing that I've received, blessings that I've received from like social media and the experiences I've had with social media is the idea of listen, and Gary Vaynerchuk's great at this, I learned this from him, is listen and give. And if you took that approach, if you take that approach, I still take that approach in life. Like when I'm talking to somebody at a cocktail party or at an event, my goal is to learn more about them. I use the FROG acronym, family, recreation, occupation, and goals.
I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's just like, so if I don't know you, Terry, and we're at a, we go to an event and there's an after party and, I see you and, hey, how you doing? Well, where does the conversation go? So I normally say, hey, are you here? Are you from this area? Where are you from? And I learn about your family. And then what do you do is, occupation, recreation, what do you like to do in your spare time? And then the last thing, goals. And you can't go wrong if you touch on all four of those points in a conversation. And I'm just taking mental notes. If I liked you, hey, you're from Canada, and I know, you've got a husband who loves airplanes or works on airplanes. And so there I know some things about you instantly that, let's say you were a potential real estate professional that we could do business together. If I find something meaningful, I could do something thoughtful and send it to you per the conversation that we had. And so that's kind of just how I built my business.
Which you did. I did get a Jenny cookie at one point.
Yeah.
It was so amazing. And since we're there, let's talk about her for a minute because we have to kind of, don't we?
Yes.
She is quite extraordinary.
Yes, she is amazing. Yes, and real quickly for social media and for internet marketing, she's done it right. She's not used a blueprint. She's done it all on her own. But the thing that she's done, obviously she has a product that's a little more sexy than mortgages.
Well, and let's just sort of lay it out for people who are not familiar with you or with Jenny. So Jenny's cookies, obviously she bakes, but that's so the very, very basement of what she does. Like there's so much more. It's so beautiful. And just the pictures that I've seen, like with the cake pops and everything's like set up in like these perfect themes, and it's like a magazine spread every time I see a picture, literally. And I have no idea how she does all of the things that she does, but from what I've seen, it is absolutely out of this world. And then when you taste it, it's amazingly delicious. So extraordinary. I can see, but clearly she has like a sense of style and design and like, she just knows how to like lay it out and showcase it in such a beautiful way, that she was clearly super smart and understands how to build her own business, obviously.
Well, and I think that's the one word I use to describe her is just creative. I can date this back to before I even knew that she was a talented baker, before she even knew how to bake. Our wedding, we got married. We had like $2,000 to our name. Like we were newlyweds. I didn't really have a job. She was an espresso girl working in a little coffee shop, and she threw the most amazing wedding on the tightest budget you've ever seen. And if you would have come to that, you'd have been like, oh my God, your parents must be loaded. No, our parents weren't able to help out. And it was just how she created the crafts and how she created everything and how creative she was. But that's the thing. That's how she's become kind of a Pinterest and Instagram sensation, is she doesn't just take pictures of her cookies. She doesn't just throw a party. It's the little things, the little extras, the styling of it that just makes it absolutely phenomenal.
I think that's the word, styling. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, and clearly it's not just the baking, it's, it's like the entire event production. It's a production. Like she puts on a show. Like this is amazing.
Well, for example, on Facebook, so right before Christmas, my top 10 referral partners, top 10 agents that I work with, I wanted to pop by and drop them off a nice little holiday gift. Well, I was planning on just bringing a few cake pops and put them in a box. Well, my wife is like, no, you can't do this. So she orders up little labels, puts 3 red cake pops in a little thing, ties it, and puts this really super cute label on it and totally blows it out of the park. And I would have never thought to do that, you know.
Well, I mean, so here's how we'll tie it all back too, because the truth is I really think 2015 and forward is really going to be more about the packaging, right? Because it's getting so noisy out there and we're all vying for everyone's attention all the time. How do you get noticed? And we know that it's, more visual. So how beautiful you make those visuals, I think, is epically important. And it's, sort of the Apple philosophy, which is let's create an experience so it's not just the cake pop, but it's the entire process of receiving this beautiful package. It's the presentation and how you open it and that entire experience of how they receive it. I mean, I absolutely love that idea and believe that's how anyone's going to stand out these days.
I agree 100%. And what I don't want this conversation to turn into is how techy we are and what we've done on the internet. So let me backstep real quickly. I'd probably say over 50% of my business, though, is old school. And I know you'll agree with this. It's really taking care of your database. What people don't realize is I'm on the phone probably. It's a non-negotiable. I'm on the phone at least 4 hours a day, every morning, making phone calls to new leads, new potential customers, real estate agents, financial planners, and my past customers. And so, a lot of people, I think they can hide. They feel like they can hide behind social, behind their computer, and just like and make comments on Facebook or send emails. And I think probably the biggest thing that's made a difference in my business is I created a form about 2 years ago. It's called the All About You form. I have every single one of my customers fill this out. So every time I meet a new client, they come in. It's a part of their loan application. And it's where I get to, how many kids do they have? Do they have pets? What are their names? What are their kids' birthdays? When were you married? When is your anniversary? Your spouse's birth date? Where did you go to college if you went to? What are your hobbies? Are you a beer or a wine, coffee, tea? And that one form I then put into a binder, and based off of some, criteria that I have in my business, that form gets studied. So my clients, I study my database. And so when it comes time to, just like the conversation that we just had a minute ago about the FROG acronym, when it comes time to, maybe reaching out to a customer, I have a reason to call them. I do an annual review. But in the meantime, I know that person went to Oregon State University, and I know that Oregon State University is playing for the national title next week. So, of course, I'm going to be finding something that I can send to them saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, go Ducks, right?
That's awesome.
So it's little things like that. And I think that what caused me to say this is you mentioned it is getting tougher. It is so noisy out there, and everybody's vying and, trying so hard to either earn somebody's business or get more business. And I think if we take a step back and listen a little better and put more focus on the business that we have, that's been huge for me.
I love that. I completely concur. This is what I tell my clients all the time too. It's about establishing relationships, maintaining relationships, enriching relationships. So how do you do that? And obviously it's maintaining connection. And we know, like, what are the NAR stats? There's something like 17% of agents actually maintain connection versus relation, like just even letting you know I still exist versus something meaningful. And so that's a huge area of opportunity. I still believe that.
Yeah, big. I agree 100% with you.
Okay, so super awesome. So while we're on the importance of your relationship and how you strive to build your business, when you're working with a client, like, one of the reasons I was super inspired by you, and I felt, and we've stayed in touch all these years, because you are a man of high integrity. Your values, your vision, the way you've designed your life seems very intentional to me. And so I'd kind of like to explore that a little bit. I mean, you did mention to me that baseball was sort of like, that sort of taught you how to be very sort of intentional. And I was wondering if you wanted to sort of tell me that story in a little bit, because I know you guys have had a couple of big things happen in the last year or so.
Yeah. So, I think we were talking about this a couple of days ago. Baseball is, and that's why obviously I'm still pretty passionate about it. I still love it. But baseball is a big part of the success that I've had in business. And, let's just take a step back and look at what it takes to be a professional athlete or a college athlete at a high level. Obviously, you have to be good. You have to be talented. But I've seen so many athletes that have all the talent in the world and they get passed up, or they don't reach their full potential, and that full potential could cost them millions. And so what I learned early on, and this is it has a lot to do with how my dad raised me and work ethic and hustle. If I wanted to be good at baseball, it wasn't just showing up to baseball practice every day. It was, you need to be physically fit. You need to eat right. You need to exercise. I was a third baseman, so you need to really have great hands and work on being a great fielder. You need to have arm strength. You need to be able to hit. You need to be able to hit for power, for contact. You need to be able to run. I mean, I just probably named off a dozen variables that play into being a great baseball player. And if we think about it, Terry, let's just talk about real estate agents and lenders. There's a minimum of 12 variables that contribute to us having success, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so all I did and all I've done is taken what I've learned in baseball and applied it to business, and I've applied it to life. And it's the same thing. I want to be, my legacy, I want to go down, and the key word there is legacy. I actually have one. I want to be known as a phenomenal husband. A husband that when I travel and I go out, my wife never has to ever guess, I wonder what Dan's doing. I wonder if he was, faithful, or I wonder, he would never have to think of that. I want to be known as a phenomenal father. And so when you have those, goals in place, it's so easy in business. I would never think of doing anything that would jeopardize my customers, whether it be their health or their wealth or whatever. And I'm dealing with, we in real estate, we're dealing with the number one, the biggest, the largest financial decision of their life. And I learned this from a coach that I coached with a year ago, Michael Mayer. He's author of the 7 Levels of Communication. I think he's America's most referred real estate professional. And he said, you never want to mess with a man's money, home, or family. Never. And if you think about what we're doing, we're messing with all of them. Money to purchase, we're moving them so they're home, and then who lives in the home? Their family. And so I just take that a lot more serious, I think, than a lot of people. And I took that degree of seriousness when I got into this industry, and I said, listen, there's a lot of mortgage brokers that really screwed things up for a lot of people, for us, reputation-wise, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to do my part to change, and in doing so, maybe I'll stand out, and I think I've stood out just a little.
Just a little. Yes, you have, Mr. Under 40, professional and most influential. So that's so inspiring to me. I think we just don't hear as often as I would like to the level of integrity that you exemplify. Like, I just feel that it's, and maybe this is sort of generational, I don't know, if it's sociological, but there isn't a lot of talk about this is the kind of man that I actually want to be. And I always ask at the end of my CTMs, what did you want your legacy to be? And so we're already there. That's awesome. But you went there all on your own because that's the kind of man that you are. And that is what I think is so inspiring to me. And then it's not a stretch to imagine that you're going to have a successful business when obviously you're going to earn that much respect just by living the way that you do. I have the hugest respect for you. How do you tell that story well? It's one thing to be this amazing man and to live in high integrity. It's another thing entirely to share that with other people, which I think is sort of 9/10 of the battle, right? If it's one thing to be there, but if people don't know that you're there, you're not going to do any business. So how do you sort of tell that well?
Yeah, and I think therein lies the value of social media. I think if anybody can access my Facebook personal page, and when you read my About Me section, and it's kind of a short life story of how I got in the mortgage industry and how much I love being a father and a husband, and love what I do. But I think, and then you take the next step further and you look at some of the photos. I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's why I love Instagram. It's you take a look at the pictures and you can just genuinely see I love my family and I love my job and I love people. And so I think, and Tara, I'm not going to lie to you, I strategically post things. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, you have to. That we're in business. That, like you said, we're in business to make money.
Yeah, and I mean, I want people to see me with my family on vacation during a work week. That shows that, hey, I've built a business and I'm in business in Disneyland. I mean, I did a coffee with Keller on Main Street in Disneyland in front of 15,000 people. And so, I think little things like that is where people can see that. And if you go to my website, you'll see too that you can go to my About Me page, but even if you are taking the next step and you're looking at getting pre-approved, you have to download my 9-page mortgage concierge packet. And the first 3 pages, and I encourage all my real estate agents and other lending partners to do this, but the first 3 pages of that tell a little about me, a little about my my family and how I got in the industry, and then my team. I highlight my team and how special my team is. And so I think just going through those avenues, people can see that.
Absolutely. And then, so I mean, I tell my clients this all the time, like, look, we're looking for some consistent effort here. And it's not just about, doing it regularly or at scheduled times. It's about actually sharing, similar, it's got to be the same story over and over, or people don't believe you, right? Because you're making it up as you go.
Yeah. And actions speak louder than words too. I mean, getting the awards like 40 under 40. This is the 3rd time I've won that award, by the way. So I won it when, at 37, 38, and 39. And so it's, by getting those accomplishments, Yelp. I am a big fan of Yelp and online reviews. So by seeing that stuff, I think they can, they get the picture. And then if you look at my Yelp profile, it's not a picture of me in a business suit. It's me holding my little boy and my little girl and my wife on the Santa Monica Pier in California. So, I mean, they're much more inclined to do business with something initially, a picture, okay, yeah, this guy looks cool, or looks inviting, right?
Yeah.
Versus me in a business suit, and then when they see the reviews, they say, oh, wow, this guy's got it together.
There's no question. Yeah. So, okay. If you were going to do something radically different, what would it be?
I'm doing something radically different this year, and it's putting more focus on lead generation, okay, and prospecting. So I've done it all wrong. It's a new coach that I'm coaching with has made it super clear to me that I could be doing things more effectively and efficiently. So it's going to require me to be on the phone a lot more, but it's kind of rebuilding my business so that he told me if somebody can do your job 80% as well as you can, it's a good idea to have them do that and then train them to bridge that 80% gap to 90 to 100%. And so from loan scenarios in business in the mortgage industry, from guidelines to loan scenarios to structuring to locking the loans, all of that, I can hire somebody that's super talented to do that, and I can focus on what I'm really, really good at, and that's prospecting, that's lead generating.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm taking a step out of my business this year to focus 100% on sales.
That's exciting.
It's exciting, but also I'm handing off a lot of duties that I would typically do.
Right.
So I'm doing that, and then one of the big things that kind of like what you do with Conversations That Matter, I really want to focus on providing more value to my partners, whether they're real estate agents or financial planners. Mm-hmm. And so I created the Home Field Advantage with Dan Keller, and I'm going to be rolling that out this year as well.
And what is the Home Field Advantage?
So the home, obviously, it's a little bit of baseball. The home field, I've said this as a husband, as a business professional, you always have to have home field advantage. You always need to take care of your home. So at home, having the home field advantage is making sure you have a happy wife, happy life.
For sure.
Know that your kids are getting taken care of, that they're being disciplined properly, that they're being brought up properly. And so in business, I want the home field advantage to be more like, okay, this is your business. From a customer standpoint, or excuse me, from a real estate agent or lender standpoint, for my audience that's viewing it, it could pertain to their business. From a customer standpoint, it's their home. Right. And I always say this, it's not just a house, it's your home. And there's a big difference between a house and somebody's home. And so I'm going to be putting that together where I've got a series of, I've already interviewed, and I use Google Plus, an insurance professional, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide weekly commentary, and they're going to be really short, probably 3 to 5 minute bits from financial planners, CPAs, insurance professionals, real estate professionals, where my audience is going to get some really good, and it's real-time advice. It's not like they're going to CNN Money or ABC News and getting the media's take on it. You're getting a real live financial planner saying, no, this may not be good because of why. Same thing with a real estate agent. So that's something I'm going to be doing this year.
It sounds so exciting, because the truth is, I feel that most people, even oftentimes realtors, including myself, didn't really understand or appreciate how difficult it is to, like, the relationship with your lender is so important, and that mortgage professional who, like, I'm going to backtrack here. It used to be the consumer would be like, I'm just looking for a rate, right? So, and I've had this explained to me a few times where it's like, no. Like, you want to know if you're in a deal and things need to get, things get tricky or hairy, you want to know you got someone who can, make things happen, that relationship is vitally important. You want someone who's going to work as hard as you do to protect your client. Yes. And so that's where I think your value is so important. Yeah. Is that, like, how do you help agents understand, like, that piece? Because I think it is tricky, and that if you're going to be giving them these little bite-sized pieces of vital information that they can then turn around and share with their clients, that's a huge value too.
Yeah, I mean, this is how it works, Terry. So we've all heard of Bank of America, for example, yes. Right? Big bank. We have a couple of really big credit unions here in the Seattle area, and this is what I tell real estate agents. If you don't care about your customers enough to make sure that they're working with somebody that is not only going to take care of them, that is actually concerned with their home and making it, taking care of the largest financial decision of their lives, then let them go to Bank of America. Let them go to Wells Fargo, for example, who have strategic connections with real estate companies nationwide. Yeah. And don't think they're not going to send weekly emails and track that customer's rate a year from now, 2 years from now. They've received a weekly email. 3 years from now, the customer thinks, well, you know what, we're looking to up, we're looking to maybe move up. And what do you think they're going to do? They're going to call Wells Fargo to get pre-approved, right? Yep. And Wells Fargo is going to say, hey, we have a connection with ABC Real Estate Company. They're going to give you back a % of commission to help with your closing costs. Would you like us to introduce us? Or would you like us to introduce you? Well, sure. That's $7,000 in savings. Yep. So then they introduce them to ABC Realty. That real estate professional that could have worked, had their clients work with me, didn't care enough. They just lost a commission because of the big picture. This is how it works. This is how the big banks are working nowadays. And so that's why I tell my agents, hey, if we do a transaction together, the customer needs are going to be the most important thing. Second to that, and full disclosure, it's your payday. Mm-hmm. I'm an insurance clause for your payday. You're 100% commission, correct? So I'm going to do everything in my power with the production that our team produces. I have some pull at my bank. If I need some strings pulled or if I need something done, it's a phone call or a text message away. Yeah. Versus being at a big bank and you have to, sorry, you're out of luck. And then third, the ongoing management of my customers. In that file, on that All About You page, the real estate agent's name on it. So every time I call them, I'm like, hey, have you talked to Terry? Oh my gosh, they just went to Hawaii. She and her husband went to Hawaii. Did you see that? So we're always bringing you back into the conversation. Yes. So there's no chance they're ever going to go somewhere else.
That's huge value, obviously, especially if I'm horrible at maintaining connections with my own clients. Suddenly I've got someone sort of being a cheerleader in my field. That's awesome.
Well, what was the stat that you said earlier? 17%?
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's as 80-something% of agents really struggle at that. So that's kind of my value add. That's kind of how I approach real estate agents up front. And then from a service standpoint, it's the most important thing in our office, and that's the most important thing, period. So.
Absolutely. So quickly back to, you're building this team, you said, and how long have you had a team, and can you kind of give us the sort of the basic structure of your team?
Yeah. If there's one thing I've done wrong, it's building a team. I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you. In 2010, from 2010 to current, 4 bad hires that cost me thousands.
Yep.
Because I didn't put enough emphasis on hiring the right person. I have Kelly right now. She's my transaction manager, office manager, director of first impressions. She is amazing. And I hired her about 2 years ago. And I make it a point to, and she's super talented. I made it a point to hire somebody that was more talented than myself, that knew more about mortgages than myself.
Wow.
And I think a lot of real estate professionals and lenders look at maybe cutting corners. Oh, I can get this person for $3,000 a month versus, you know what, pay somebody what they're worth. They're going to make you back that money in the long run tenfold. So I hired Kelly about 2 years ago, and then I'm in the process right now of hiring more of a loan assistant, that person to fill that gap, the guidelines, and because I've been able to get away with my processor doing that, my loan processor doing that.
Right.
The bank that I'm at right now is switching gears, so I'm going to lose my processor in that role. So I've got Kelly, I've got Brenda, my loan processor, and I've got the question mark on who will fill that next role. But, going about how I hired them, the interview process, the DISC assessment, personality types, making sure that person's personality fits the role. I really screwed up early on in that, and I think that's where I'm a little bit more intelligent now.
So I love that you're being so honest about that. It could be extremely helpful for a lot of people if we could get a little more specific about, what mistakes did we make exactly? I mean, because I think this is a common problem. We talk a lot about just build your team and outsource the things, but that's very surface, and that doesn't really help. You know what I mean? Like, so how do we structure a team well? How do we know how to fill those roles well?
Yeah. And finding that person that shares in, the same value system that you have. And, it's hard in our industry, Terry, because we're hiring somebody to fill a more of a fulfillment role. So from a processor to Kelly, my assistant, working on loan documents, she's 9 to 5. I don't want to ever say that she's paper pushing, but she's dealing a lot with paper, not people.
Yes.
I'm more of the front end. And to find somebody that actually is really good at working with people and knows the customer is never wrong, the customer is always the most important thing, it was huge. And that was that's what I've totally hit a home run with Kelly. She's such a great people person, but she's more organized than my mom, my wife, and Martha Stewart combined. So,
wow, I need one of those.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I need. She makes me look good.
Yeah, right. Good for her. It's always about that strong assistant behind.
Yep.
Always. Okay,
Yeah.
So you said you did the DISC profiling. It's interesting that you brought that up because we literally had a poolside bar camp in Hawaii, and we were talking specifically about those profiling tests and how, one of my clients was there actually, and she said exactly that it is this very powerful tool to help assess personalities and whether or not they're a fit. So would you say that the culture fit is more important than skill? Like, what can skill be taught?
Yeah, I think in our industry, certainly in our industry, skill can be taught. I mean, obviously Kelly had 14 years experience when I hired her, and I had 4, not even
wow.
4. And so I obviously was looking for somebody that knew their way around the mortgage industry. But, our industries, I don't know as much in real estate, in lending. Guidelines change every month. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the government, they're always changing stuff up for us. And so, yeah, I was more focused on the culture match, the personality match, the value match, to be honest with you. I wanted somebody that cared as much about every customer and every potential customer as much as I did. And so, and I found it, and trust me, it wasn't easy finding that person.
And so was it like a big deal for you to sort of get to that point where like I'm ready to hire? How scary is that for you to sort of relinquish some control, spend some dollars, frankly, right? And like you said, which I think is so important, which is, make the investment. If there's one lesson I've learned the last few years, it's think a little bit bigger and be willing to spend and invest in your own business, because that does come back and creates different levels of success for you depending on how in you are. Like I always say too, like feels like people who really struggle and are challenged, and I've been guilty of being one of these people, is when your foot's sort of half in and half out. You're either fully committed and you have a strong vision and you know where you're going, or you're just sort of hedging your game and waiting to see what else might come along, and then that's where it feels like you really are challenged. But when you do go all in, then so I'm sorry, I'm the worst interviewer on the planet. The question was, like, how hard was it for you to sort of take that next step?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the thing. I'd gone through 4 people before Kelly, and I'd done it wrong. I'll give you a really small base so that I didn't have a huge risk. I didn't have a ton of skin in the game. I'll give you a small base, and then based on our volume, I'll pay you. And I was thinking, well, they'll be more motivated because the more we do, the more they make. It's not their business. It wasn't their business.
Yeah.
And so it took me literally thousands, I don't want to say hundreds of thousands, but pretty darn close, of wasting money, paying money to really figure out, and nobody really told me this. I didn't have a coach, a trainer tell me this. I had to figure it out the hard way that, hey, I'm going to commit to paying somebody what they're worth. I'm going to pay them it's a salaried employee.
Yes.
And these are the duties. This is what I want you to do. It's 9 to 5 or whatever it would be, but it's 40 hours a week. This is your job, and if you don't do this, then you're fired and you're going to have to work somewhere else. But what I made a point of doing was showing Kelly that I'm going to be the best person that she will ever have an opportunity to work for or with. And so that's part of being a leader, I think, Terry, is, I'm leading her just as she's my employee. She needs to be led. She knows what she needs to do, but at what level, at what degree. And so I think early on, those were some of the big mistakes that I made. And then as I met Kelly and as I transitioned into, okay, I'm all in and I've got to make this work. And so, it was tough for a few months. And you made a comment early on that I've done a few things in a really challenging market. The mortgage industry is not the easiest industry to get into, especially with all the guidelines and the regulations and the housing market going down in 2008 and 2009 and 2010 and doing its thing in 2010 and 2011 and then kind of coming back in 2012. And so, it was risky, but it was the best investment I've ever made in my business ever to date.
That's so inspiring. I mean, it really is, because if you can do that, I mean, I think we've really created a template here. Like, honestly, if you just get really clear about who you are and your vision and what your values are and knowing where you're going, and then being fully committed and being prepared to invest in that, that's honestly, that really is the recipe for success.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, and of course it wasn't. You've worked so hard. You stand by and live by your values. You set the example. You are a leader, obviously. And I do think that's why not everyone does it, right? Because it does require you to have a lot more skin in the game, to take bigger risks and potentially lose. So my hat's off to you. I just think you've done an amazing job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Normally at this point, I would be asking you, what do you want your legacy to be? Let's tie that up a little. Let's go back to a little bit about, where are you going? We know family is incredibly important to you. What is your overall vision for your life?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids right now that are at really, really important ages. And in the next 3 to 5 years, even at very more important ages, I think. And so my goal, my wife and I have been married 10 years, and we're dialed in there. I'm striving every day to be a better husband and do things over there that I can can do to strengthen our relationship and strengthen our skills as parents. But I think, you know, in the next 3 years, to get my mortgage practice to where it's where I want it to be, and I don't want to say hit cruise control because I think that's a bad word, but get it to a point where I think once you reach a certain amount of closed transactions in any business, I don't care if you're a dentist, a doctor, a real estate broker, lawyer, you get that repeat clientele, and especially if you manage it the way that I do. So I'm looking for that, you know, 600 to 800 past client database. And then I love speaking, I love motivating, encouraging, and helping. I'd love to, you know, move forward in that arena in the mortgage and real estate industries. And so that's kind of my short term. Big picture, you know, I want to be there for Hudson if he wants to play baseball and help coach him. I don't care if he wants to play the saxophone or whatever, but I want to be there for my daughter and my son.
I was going to say, it could be your daughter that wants to play baseball. You don't know.
I know, you know, whatever. And I tell my wife this all the time. I'm not going to force athletics on them, but I see what it did for me. And so there's a big place in my heart for competitive sports. But I want to be there. And so I've got I'd say about 5 years to make that happen. So that's my motivation. That's my why.
I love it. I love it. I knew this was going to be super inspirational, and of course it has been. Let's wrap it here, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation that I do think matters. I think you are literally, one of the strongest leaders I've had the good fortune of knowing, and I really do. I watch you, I follow, and I'm inspired by the things you do, and I'm going to try and incorporate some of the things that you've taught me.
Well, I love it. Thank you for taking the time to reach back out to me, and we need to be in touch more often because I love talking to you.
Ditto. Hi to Jenny and the kids. Have a wonderful, wonderful new year, and we'll have to talk very, very soon.
Okay. Bye, Terry.
Okay. Bye.